will stay stable. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar on using incubators and accelerators to support travel and tourism startups. Today's webinar is organised by the OECD together with our colleagues in the European Commission in DG Move. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jane Stacey. I'm Head of Tourism at the OECD. And over the next 2 hours, we have the opportunity to hear from and discuss with a great lineup of speakers. In many countries, incubators and accelerators have become key instruments in fostering entrepreneurship and stimulating innovation across many sectors. Yet in tourism, the role of incubators and accelerators, their impact and potential remains less discussed and understood. Even as SMEs are at the core of the tourism sector, and innovation is essential to make tourism more competitive, to respond to rapidly evolving traveller expectations, to harness the potential of AI and other emerging technologies, and to develop more sustainable business and destination management practices. So today, the aim is to explore these mechanisms in the tourism context and how incubators and accelerators can help to unlock opportunities for startups and early stage businesses in the tourism value chain. This webinar is part of work that here at the OECD with the Tourism Committee we are doing at the request of the European Commission. This work aims to inform the development of business support programs that promote a more dynamic, innovative and competitive tourism ecosystem as a whole. It's also contributing to the European Commission's efforts in preparing the EU Sustainable Tourism Strategy, but I'll let my European Commission colleagues say more on that in a moment. So during the webinar today, we will share some insights from a draft policy paper that the OECD is preparing as part of this work. This policy paper is drawing on survey responses from countries and stakeholders, as well as the wider OECD work on tourism, SMEs and entrepreneurship. We will then today have an opportunity to exchange views and experiences on the role of incubators and accelerators in tourism, to discuss what types of support are most relevant for startups across the tourism value chain, to explore good practices and success stories that can hopefully inspire others, and to consider the potential for dedicated initiatives in the tourism sector and potential interest in creating a network of incubators and accelerators to support tourism entrepreneurship. So this is the overall agenda we have today. Your input is invaluable. It's an opportunity to consult with a wide range of stakeholders to refine our understanding and to identify possible ways forward in future policy directions. Our speakers will help stimulate our thinking, and we encourage all participants to also Q&A function throughout the discussion. So with that, I will give the floor to Misa Lavarile from DG Move to say some words, after which my former OECD colleague and current expert to the OECD, Hannes Thies, will present the initial findings and key messages from the work and guide us through the discussion. So Misa, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'll be very, very short because I'm here to learn and not really here for anything else. We asked OECD to focus some work. You do know they do excellent analytical work, and to focus their attention now on this topic, because in the context of preparing a EU strategy for tourism, which will be adopted next year, we have been wondering whether perhaps startups need some kind of special attention. Support measures, they may differ from those that we provide our SMEs. This was the initial line of thinking, and then as we dive deeper in it, we realized that, as Jane already said, innovation very often happens in tourism these days digitally, and digital innovators are often startups. So you see how it all comes together. Innovation is not just digital. We are very well aware of that, but that will be for another webinar another time. But when it comes to startups, they really do shape the ecosystem in a way that is very new. It is very fast paced, and it is data driven and it's technology driven, and it has its own challenges. I'm not very familiar with those challenges. Before you ask, it's not because the Commission doesn't work with startups. We do a lot of work on entrepreneurship, but because you're now talking to the tourism team. And when it comes to tourism, that is an area that we would like to explore a bit more. So this is our opportunity to better understand what's going on. And that's why I'm here to listen and to learn, and to listen to these excellent speakers and your input, so that we can gauge, assess whether a new tourism strategy coming out next year should look into this, should take it into account, or perhaps whether you think that enough is being done at national level, international level, and perhaps the EU should not meddle. That could also be a part of our conclusions. We're very open-minded. So it's exciting to be here. Thank you so much again to the OECD colleagues for organizing this. And I think no more needs to be said other than let's get cracking.
Thanks a lot, Jane. Thanks a lot, Misa. So I'm sharing the screen and looking forward to present you some of the findings of our analysis that we carried out. So now the slides should move. Exactly. I will move to the next slide in a minute. But let me start here and saying that this has been really interesting work, and also surprisingly to my knowledge, there were much more diverse set of incubators and accelerators than expected. So there's a lot going on in the tourism sector, and a lot we can build upon and think about the future. How to address and make more out of the potential that we see in startups, but also the potential of incubation and acceleration. But before diving into the incubation, let's start also with the role of startups for innovation, and also as Misa mentioned. So innovation remains a central element of our tourism policies, of our economic sector. Think about the many calls for innovation regarding digitalization, but also innovation regarding sustainability. And for sure, the tourism sector relies on new solutions to address a couple of key challenges, may it be labor shortage, may it be climate adaptation, digital transformation. All of these things are requesting, in this case, new and digital solutions, which then also where we can ask, where does innovation in tourism come from? And of course, there are innovative companies. We have a lot of innovation programs for established business, for SMEs. Many activities are taking place in destinations. But what about the startups in tourism? They are the ones that should provide creativity, innovativeness, as well as quick adaptation to digital opportunities and so on. And with this power that we associate with startups, we should then also ask whether we recognize startups in the tourism sector and the policy making sufficiently. So there are plenty of startups and success stories. Also in the European countries, and you can see also here on the left side with the Eurostat figure that accommodation and food services show a moderate level of business dynamics, with a birth rate of about 10% in 2024. Of course, there's also a business death rate, which is then also very similar to other sectors. It is a little bit lower than in the transportation sector, but we are, for example, showing a bit higher business birth rate than, for example, in manufacturing. Of course, this is different in different countries, but the aim here was just for me to show that this is the data that we have, but we also miss a lot of evidence, the relevant information to take a deep dive into evaluating startups, their needs, their survival rate, and then also in the tourism sector, but also thinking about different tourism sub-segments. So what we know is that startups, and we are also including scale-ups in this discussion, face well-known barriers. Think about access to finance, skill shortages. So these are things that we see across economic sectors. And these challenges often limit then the ability of these young firms to bring innovation really into a sector. So they may need specific support to unfold their innovative capabilities. And at the same time, we need to be aware that there are also plenty of funds and also economy-wide startup support mechanisms. But taking again the tourism lens, this raises also the question if there are specific needs to be addressed for tourism and travel startups. And with the work we are discussing today, what role can incubators and accelerators play in this regard? So when we look at the wider business support structures in tourism, we see many different actors at play: industry associations, DMOs, government programs, big corporates. So they are usually providing grants and funding, but also technical support or training. And in this setting, also incubators emerged as an additional mechanism to provide a very tailored, a very individual support for startups, and often for a limited number of startups, as usually in these programs, the spots are rather limited. So again, quickly on the difference between the two concepts we are discussing here, incubation, acceleration. To make it clear, incubation focuses on support of very early stage ventures, idea phase, pre-seed phase, providing services like mentoring, but also facilities like workspace. While acceleration focuses more on the growth support, so seed and early growth startups with a similar set of services. And then we could continue this list also by adding venture capital, which then also drives large-scale growth through financing. And as you can see also on the right-hand side, the OECD, but other international organizations as well, are working on incubation and acceleration. Specifically, there has been also work together with the European Commission on supporting inclusive entrepreneurship, the report that you can see on the right-hand side. And this for example, identified about 900 incubation programs in Europe, which is quite a number. And we can see this growing relevance of these programs also in publications from ILO, other international organizations that reveal this growing number of incubation and acceleration. But again, coming back to tourism sector, we lack a kind of stock take or maybe an understanding of how incubation could actually work in our sector. So our aim with this project, as Jane and Misa already highlighted, is to bring a little bit of a structure and with a first mapping of what is out there. And ideally, it would then also mean to understand what the enabling conditions for travel and tourism startups depend on. What are their needs? What about access to digital tools? What about sector-specific data? What about virtual workspaces, and so on and so forth? But also focusing here with this project now in the first instance on the current landscape of incubation. We want to understand how incubation and acceleration are currently used in the sector, and then map the programs that are already out there, asking who operates these programs, which topics are covered, which services are provided, and so on, to create a kind of first stock take. And we will then also in the first session discuss a couple of these good examples that we can see that we identified in the analysis. And then today also to advance to a bit more complex questions such as, are these incubation programs successful? What can be done to improve the startup support? How can we maybe link then also existing initiatives? To quickly touch upon the draft paper, which is under development, the paper describes the role of startups as important agents of change, but also agents of innovation. Also, we have seen that there is a lack of data to fully capture the tourism startups, but important to make the link from policies that are requesting innovation to startups who could potentially provide such innovative services. And then we elaborated also on the potential incubation and acceleration can bring. And there we can build also on previous sector agnostic studies that highlight the very individual approach of incubation, then also in close cooperation with the startups, but also with established corporates or industry associations. So with a focus on tourism, we conducted then also a survey of EU and OECD countries to share their initiatives. Thanks for taking part in the survey. And this has been also complemented by a lot of desk research, which revealed a surprisingly large number of programs. So as I told you in the first instant, we weren't really sure about the incubation landscape in tourism. But this complexity should be also illustrated by this excerpt of our main table, and this will then be also be developed further until the publication date comes. But just as a short excerpt here. So we mapped more than 60 programs, so tourism-specific incubation programs, based on a couple of criteria: geographic reach, ownership form, format, duration, service provided, and so on. And as you can see here with the first example, sustainable tourism SME support in this regard, we tried to capture the main characteristics. But the whole table includes then also a couple of EU initiatives, but also many country-specific programs. And what we see is also that nearly every European country engages in business incubation, many of them also with tourism-focused programs. Before I talk about the overall learnings from the analysis, let me give you an idea of how incubation acceleration functions by the use of a couple of examples on this slide. So there are, of course, many good practices, but here we like to show the variety of incubation. So, for example, take Cultural Detour, an EU program which supports startups in tourism experience sector, including Spain, Greece, Slovenia. They are participating. So a cross-country program. It has been developed out of the pandemic. Also something that we see quite often as starting point for a couple of programs. So the pandemic has definitely pushed some of these programs. Second, Web3 Tour, a program of a limited time span in this regard, covering also established businesses, which is also an interesting element, linking startups and established businesses. But also we see Argo Travel Tech, public-private initiative, which also provide venture capital involvement, which is special about these programs. Slow Tourism Lab in France, focusing on low impact, more community-led tourism development, also prototyping different facilities and empowering local entrepreneurs. Same for RACE program in Costa Rica. Starts at biodiversity-friendly tourism, and we will hear about this program also in this webinar today. Tech2B in Austria, more of a technical perspective, providing facilities, expertise, also to reflect technical matters in tourism, operated by a federal state, so also a different geographical scale. Luxembourg City Incubator. This is interesting because it's a multi-year incubation, closely linked also to the Chamber of Commerce. Also interesting for a local place-based approach in the city of Luxembourg. Tourism Collab in Portugal is then more a fast-paced bootcamp designing to spark idea generation in the first instance, and also early validation of tourism startups. Airport Innovation Runway in the Netherlands is in this regard different, as it enables startups also to test their solutions directly in this airport ecosystem. So showing that also infrastructure access matters and is an important element in startup support. Finally, EHL Innovation Hub Switzerland, university-driven incubation. as an additional example. So taking a step back from the individual programs, so there are a few overarching patterns that become clear from the analysis. So first, on the thematic focus, it is great to see that strategic priorities such as digitalization, sustainability are reflected in many programs. We see the RAISES program in Costa Rica, tourism tech in France. We will hear about these programs later. But in general, we can say that it seems the more complex an economy is and the more relevant its tourism economy, the more specialized are the incubation programs. So this is totally without any judgment. Also, sector agnostic incubation in smaller countries could work very well. So, but this is just a pattern that became somehow obvious. But what we are missing a bit, and this is just from the analysis, seems to be the direct link to the current tourism pain points. So think about crowding, climate adaptation, labor shortages. So it may be that it comes through the products of the startups, but rarely incubation programs state these issues in their missions. There are, of course, again, good examples. We also see the EU Star Growth program focusing then also on specific challenges in ecotourism. Moving on, geographic reach. So given that many issues are familiar across countries, I think it's reasonable that there are EU-driven programs. I think these are especially powerful as they follow a shared approach and make these programs accessible for a couple of countries. And for incubation and acceleration, we see also plenty of local programs. It might be city incubation in Athens, Paris, Luxembourg, but also in rural spaces, there are a couple of programs available. What we seem to be missing is the linking of programs across geographical levels beyond the EU examples. So also thinking that maybe a local incubation can be linked to national incubation system, or is it even possible for startups to climb such a geographical ladder, or how to help successful players from one country to access new markets. So there might be a potential there as well. On the ownership structure, the models, ownership models cover a broad range. So we see, of course, corporate programs of the big players, Lufthansa, Amadeus, but also economy-wide players, plug and play. They have a specific tourism stream, for example. And there are often public initiatives where industry associations cooperate. We can see this with Capsule T in Greece, in cooperation with the Hotel Association, and many more examples. The risk that we see that there might be a dependency on funding cycles and also limited access to venture capital, which is then also important to scale if we are thinking about this public financing approach. Maturity stage, we clearly see a dominance of pre-seed programs showing that policymakers, destinations are keen to get new ideas from the startups. So we see a lot of tourism competitions, but there might be also a support for scale-ups, for mid-stage SMEs. And a similar issue is visible when we think about this format. So many boot camps, competitions happen in a very limited time span. So it would be great to see also maybe more cluster-led approaches, matchmaking, as we see in the EU Eco Tandem projects, bringing together startups, but also established businesses. So this is also an interesting format. But all in all, we see this need for longer-term pathways to provide continuity as well, which is then also linked to the funding of acceleration programs. So we see many short-term programs, so we might miss a little bit the longer perspective. And maybe also a kind of institutionalization of the programs, which is missing if an accelerator runs for 1, 2, or 3 years. So the facilities and services illustrate also a great variety and options to design incubation. What is currently missing are more specialized test environments, thinking about living labs. We see this in Faros, in Italy, also in Spain with airport test beds. But also, what about hotels, restaurants as real-world and urban testing environments? So there might be a gap there. And finally, we need to also ask the question about financing. So venture capital is still underdeveloped in tourism, also needed then also to scale up businesses. So all of these suggestions suggest that if we want to tourism incubation to play a meaningful role, we probably need more continuity, or also better integration with other programs and with policy priorities. So let me quickly summarize the mapping and the analysis. So most programs are short-term, early-stage support-driven, providing more space for scaling, SME transformation. There is space to more directly address the key tourism challenges and to embed with the wider policy mix. Also, dependency on public funding, integration of corporate actors might be an area of further interest. And finally, also to say that monitoring and impact assessment are still kind of underdeveloped, so we lack ways to measure the long-term effectiveness of incubation, acceleration. So think also about the success rate of startups. How do we really judge the incubation and the startup support? So this analysis is feeding into our policy considerations, and today the discussion will also be reflected in the paper and the upcoming policy considerations. To quickly summarize, there are a couple of elements here based on the analysis. What about integration into the policy mix? So understanding tourism needs, the needs of startups, the long-term, the mission-driven incubators that address climate, labor, or digital challenges. But then also an important point on coordination of the programs as a relevant area. Currently, there's limited coordination across local, national, EU level scales, but also interesting would be a cross-sectoral collaboration with the tech, with the environment industry. What about creative industry? So there are opportunities to deepen this cooperation also in the light of incubation programs. Another secret, permanent hubs, alumni structures, and these things would then also strengthen community building and continuity. And this is where we are with the policy considerations as a couple of starting points to be discussed further. And we also see something like visibility communication of available programs. As you are aware, with this flood of information and possibilities also for startups and SMEs, it might be also difficult for some actors to really identify where do they get support as a startup in the tourism sector. So these are a couple of issues that we see, and we are raising additional questions for the discussion today. And in the first section, we will also take a look at these good examples and ask, how does incubation acceleration function in your program? Who is involved? And all of these questions, which will be hopefully very inspirational to the audience. And then we have also our panel discussion where we can go further and discuss also the wider policy area and whether there's a need for that dedicated initiatives and what needs to be done also to improve this business incubation. With this, I stop sharing my slides, and we are proceeding with the next set of speakers. So as you can see also in the programs, incubator, accelerators in practice in the tourism sector. And I'm happy that we have plenty of interesting programs available around the table today. There aren't two accelerators that look alike. They are very specific and each has a different approach. So happy to hear from the speakers about their success stories as well. And for the audience, please use the chat to raise your questions. Speakers can specifically answer, also directly answer your questions if you do not have time to answer on stage. So we will now start and go one by one with the short pitches. And without wasting any time, please, Katarina, take the virtual stage and tell us more about Capsule T in Greece. So Katarina is the director of this program, Hellenic Chamber of Hotels, HOTRAC in Greece, and also, of course, representative of the Capsule T Accelerator. Please, Katarina, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity to share what we do in Greece and the opportunity to meet all the other accelerators or incubators. It is a very important initiative, I think, and it will lead to many, many collaborations from now on, I'm sure. So today I would like to start with my first slide. Next, please. Thank you. So Capsule T. Capsule T is an initiative launched by the Hellenic Chamber of Hotels in 2019. The Hellenic Chamber of Hotels is a public entity of Greece, and it started this program for two main reasons. First of all, to support the young talent and the startups coming from Greece, and also to support the members of the chamber, all the hoteliers of Greece, to embrace and share their market needs so they can the startups can create solutions for the real problems of the market. It's the first accelerator and the only one in Greece focusing only on tourism. We have two main programs running every year, and it's free for all the startups, free of fees or equity. We don't receive any of this. And also we have a program and activities focusing on opportunities abroad, mainly for alumni startups from the acceleration program, the winners of the competition part of the program that travel with us in exhibitions, and I will say more as we go ahead. And also we try to have many synergies and collaborations with industry leaders, our partners, our strategic partners, are very known companies, either internationally or locally, that support our program with the in-kind services, with workshops, and also all the hoteliers are opening their doors for us to enter and visit their hotels for the startups to understand more about how a hotel works and what they need. And also the startup ecosystem in general in Greece, we participate in different collaborations in fintech related solutions and many other. Next, please. So the two programs I mentioned, the first one is the Idea Platform Youth Competition. It's a small program which is like an incubator / hackathon. It's a competition addressing young graduates or students. And it's a 4-week intensive program where the workshops and the mentoring is coming from the market, and it's coming from mature startups towards the younger ones coming in with just an idea. And finally, we offer at the demo day a small cash award for the ideas that excel during that program, for them to just have some petty cash to start their idea and go into the market. The acceleration program is the main program that we focus a lot. It's addressing early stage startups. It's five months acceleration program. We receive many applications, but we get a group of 8 to 10 startups so we can focus on them and work on them. And we offer in-kind services, of course, financial support through awards and office spaces for the startups during or even after the program. And as you mentioned, community is something that we work on. So the next phase, the international delegation and the participation in international exhibitions, is that part that we focus with our winners from the program. So even if you're, finished the program in 2023, you may be eligible to come with us in this type of delegations, like exhibitions around the world, where you can find new clients and learn more about how to expand in that market. Next slide, please. So very quickly, the idea platform competition flow, we go into universities and colleges and present the theme of the competition. We discuss about the needs of the market. It's very important for young talent to understand, everybody wants to create an application, but the need is now focusing on sustainability, on AI, on digital transformation for B2B concerned businesses, and even the resources, the employee resources that are short. Then we have a welcoming event, mentoring, online workshops. The whole program runs online, and then we finish up with the demo day. Next slide, please. So the acceleration program is very different from what we have in Greece, I believe. We start with the onboarding. We have a series of workshops, like 18 to 20 workshops on business skills and travel-related issues. Lots of meetups, mentoring. Mentors are industry leaders that support throughout the 5 months the startups. On-site visits, that's the main differentiation. I believe we take our startups into hotels, into travel businesses, and they meet with the owners and executives. They present they pitch their idea, the product, and they receive important feedback. And also during that meetings, they can promote pilots. So the extent of pilots slash sales or deals is through this type of activities. As well as we have a huge stand in 2 Greek exhibitions where also the startups can promote for the first time and have the idea how to work the crowd during an exhibition. And we conclude with our closing ceremony. It's a huge demo night, not the demo day. They pitch their final product or service, because they work during the 5 months, they pivot, so they have different approach at the end. And then we announce 3 winners. The first winner gets a 10,000 euros prize, the second winner 5,000, and the third winner 3,000. Next slide, please. So moving, yes. So this slide just captures a bit of what we've done in 6 years, taking into account that we had 2 years of COVID. So even though we had this problem, we continued digitally. And I want you to keep in mind that the 62 pivots is a huge number, I believe, and also 279 pilots also is a huge number. Of course, clients and partnerships, but you see how intense the work is and the mentoring and how the startups accelerate and differentiate at the end, more into the needs of the market. Next slide, please. Very quick couple of numbers, 26 participation at Greek and international exhibitions like WTM London, ITB Berlin, Fitur. We have been invited and participated at panels, workshops, and community events to share what we have done as Capsulti and together with our startups. And last but not least, we have organized 70 events in collaboration with local hoteliers associations around Greece. This is a program that focuses to promote their alumni, not the cohort that we are currently running. So if we continue to have this notion of community and promotional opportunities for our startups. Next slide, please.
Katarina, please speed up and come to an
Yes,
end. Sorry.
yes. So moving forward. Next slide, please. Next. So just for example, we have, I'm showcasing 8 startups that have managed to get funded through angel investment mainly. And most of them found their angels and through networking during the startup acceleration in Capsule T, or just after with the all promotion and the knowledge that the market had about them. Next slide, please. And another example of startups that at this time may have not received any funding, but they have significant market growth, which makes them sustainable. They are still running, and they have growth also outside of Greece in other countries. And some of the startups are focusing on sustainability and AI solutions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I will not take many of this time with this slide, just for you to understand how small is the ecosystem in Greece. About 1,000 startups are currently registered in the National Registry, Startup Registry, and travel and hospitality ranks 3rd out of the 27 industry categories in this registry. Next slide, please. This is an exercise to understand better how the difference before and after Capsule T. In the second column, you see some numbers which are not official numbers because nothing was registered before. And in the third column, you see the difference after Capsule T, and the numbers mentioning here, like 70 startups coming from Capsule T and more than 50% survival rate is only about Capsule T numbers. So the effect, of course, in the market is more, I believe, but we don't have all the data. This is the data that we can share based on our knowledge through our program. And I'm closing with the next slide.
Good.
Very quickly. I think we will have the time to discuss more. You've mentioned already some points. This is what we have registered as Capsule T sector effect, generating interest, creating new ideas, building knowledge and attracting interest about startups for the hoteliers. So they are more open in new technologies and startups to collaborate and do deals with them, and facilitating, of course, a network and a community that will grow and eventually alter prior winners and participants support the new ones coming into the program. Thank you all for today. Hopefully we have more time to discuss later on.
Thanks, Katerina. And this is really the starting point, I think, of the discussion. And also to mention that we are aiming to share the slides of the speakers. So if we do not manage to touch on every slide, this should be okay with us. Interesting case, also the combination with idea platform and the delegation. And also, as you were showing, a couple of success criteria, because this is still an open question. How do we measure success? Please stay with us, but we are moving forward to Beta I, which operates also economy-wide, but also has a specific stream on tourism. So please welcome Gustavo Magalhães, Director Beta I in Portugal. Please, Gustavo.
Thank you so much, Hannes. Okay, so it's a really great pleasure to be here with you and among such a distinguished group of specialists in tourism. So I'll first like to thank the opportunity to be talking to you, and it's very exciting to be sharing with you. So today, what I propose is I would like to take you through a journey, which is the journey that we took from ecosystem to execution in tourism innovation, and I hope that's of interest to you. So let's begin then the presentation. My name is Gustavo Magalhães. I'm a director at BET-I Collaborative Innovation. We are a consultancy company based in Portugal, but we operate in global reach. So essentially, we bring startups from all over the world. And so essentially what we do is we connect startups, innovative startups to incumbents, such as large corporates and governments, large organizations, which includes obviously the tourism sector. So for context, also let me give you some numbers to kind of give some credibility and the data to support some of our claims. We've been doing this for many years, so we have a pretty large number, we believe, of programs and startups that came through our projects. And I would like to also kind of give you a bit of context on how we started and got over here. And so essentially we started as an incubator. Next slide, please. We worked with a number. Oh, yes, thank you. And so we started as an incubator back in 2009, 2010, and also a accelerator. Let me remind you that in Portugal at the time, 2010 was a very difficult time economically for Portugal, and therefore there was a need to kind of stimulate the entrepreneurial landscape in Portugal. And what we saw was interesting in the same way that was noted before here in this session about how COVID triggered a number of small businesses to start. We saw something similar happening in Portugal, where the economic turmoil and limitations of the time really kind of promoted an entrepreneurial boost in Portugal. So moving on and focusing here on tourism, which is essentially what we want to look at. We started initially with Lisbon Challenge, so working with Turismo de Portugal, the national agency in Portugal around tourism. We started with Lisbon Challenge to essentially map and connect to this let's say, growing ecosystem at the time. And this was a successful endeavor. We did this program for 11 editions straight. So we really worked very nicely to bring together and connect with the whole ecosystem. And then moving on to the next program we did was essentially Beta Shift, which we used to get closer to this ecosystem to generate new ideas and ignite some very early stage solutions, seed and pre-seed to start to kinder the ecosystem. And then we moved on to a program later on called Smart Open Lisboa. And this really was the first program where we started to work in an integrated way with the city. So essentially, we started to place with some interesting geometry of players. We had the city council in the center, and then we attracted a number of corporates and large companies that somehow operate in the city, and then we attracted the startups. So we did this for 8 editions with a lot of success, fortunately. And in the next slide, what we'll see is what we also brought, which was working through verticals in every different edition. So each edition we would dedicate to a specific pain point. And then originally, as we started with tourism, but then we worked upstream in other areas that really also influence how tourism can flow more downstreams. So let's move on to the next slide, please. We brought startups to challenge owners, the classic work that we do in matchmaking for programs. But we didn't just do that. We also engaged local partners, where we see in the next slide. So we engaged the bus operator in Lisbon and one of the main football clubs in Lisbon to also kind of bring everyone together and operate as an ecosystem. So it was really program that we're proud of. Okay, so let's follow up, and in the next section, what we'll do is we'll deep dive in Journey. Journey is a program that is essentially an open innovation program. We double down on open innovation, understanding that is a suitable format to accelerate tourism innovation. And so we started essentially working with the airport ecosystem, a pretty complex ecosystem, as we all know. And in the next slide, what we'll see is next slide, please. Sponsored by Turismo de Portugal, we brought different agents here. We brought the main operator in the airports. We also brought other operators, private-owned operators in the airport. We also brought the regulator here. And all together, we brought this up as a program. And essentially, we had some really interesting results. These are some numbers that we've accumulating over the years. And next slide, please. What we'll see is a very standard methodology here in terms of the open innovation approach. I'm sure all of us are comfortable with this, including the startups out there. And so also next slide, please. What we see are some of the results here. These are just some results I wanted to highlight to you. And more than the content itself, you can see this offline. The content will be shared with you is to kind of raise the attention here of the different geometries of stakeholders that we have in each of the pilots. So we have the main operator with some, let's say, secondary operator in the airport. They're connecting through a pilot. Then we have a similar example in the second pilot. In the third pilot, we see an example of the main operator with a startup together with a regulator. The point here that we're trying to make is in such complex ecosystems, such as tourism, for example, and thinking about the city as a system itself, it's impossible to do work without activating the different stakeholders in the ecosystem and to create the value. So that's it for today. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope this was useful to you. I presented some examples. But we regularly have opportunities for startups who want to innovate in the tourism sector, and also that includes hotels, restaurants, and sustainability. So do reach out if you want to talk more. My contact is over there. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Gustavo. Thanks for staying in time. But first of all, interesting to see how you directly address the tourism pain points and also to link with the different stakeholders. This is really an interesting case. We move forward. Our next speaker introduces France Tourisme Tech. Here we see another speciality. So not all incubators, accelerators have incubation actually in their name, but they actually provide services, facilities for incubation. So I'm welcoming Miriam Chavad, Innovation, Travel Tech and Data Project Officer at the French Ministry of Economic and Finance. Please, Miriam, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Hannes. Hello. It's a pleasure to introduce the France Tourism Tech program. So it's a national program launched in 2023 after COVID by the French Ministry of Economy. And this initiative addresses critical gaps in France travel tech's ecosystem. So an internal study revealed 3 key challenges. So first of all, the low visibility of French travel tech solutions, as there is only one unicorn in France, which is BlaBlaCar, siloed innovation and underinvestment in travel tech startups compared to other industries. So France Tourism Tech aims to catalyze France travel tech champions. And we have 6 challenges that we are tackling with this program. So first of all, technological sovereignty. We'd like to reduce reliance on foreign players to foster innovation and collaboration. So co-innovation, innovation between startups and big corporations, for instance. We'd like to boost fundraising and investment, and to help to scale projects from pilot to full deployment. So that's the transformation points. And of course, sustainability is also a priority for our ministry. And we'd like to align innovation with environmental goals. So if you could please go to the next slides. Thanks a lot. So we do select each year between 10 and 15 startups And they must meet this criteria. So to be headquartered in France, to have integrated emerging technology, digital or innovative hardware solutions. They need to have a MVP, so to have demonstrated their technology already, to be independent. And the selection process, actually, startups submit proposals, and there is then a pre-selection and a pitch in front of a jury made of partners from the program, so from big corporates and public actors. So, for instance, we had 120 applications this year, 20 auditions, and only 10 laureates. So if you could please go to the next slide. Thanks. So this is an ongoing support during 1 year. And we have actually the program is built on 3 pillars. First one is open innovation. So we organize strategic matchmaking and learning expeditions to drive pilot projects. So an example of a pilot, after I will show you a video of an example of actually an open innovation between the startup Ascona and Versailles Castle. We do offer advisory. So there is a referee for each startups that offers tailored guidance on funding, international opportunities. And the last pillar is visibility. So we do organize global promotion for startups. For instance, during events, so for instance, at Vivatech, we were with the startups in the Travel Tech Hub, also in other trade fairs specialized in tourism, of course. And recent addition, we have a public procurement support to startups, so they can try to collaborate more with the public sector. And if you could please go to the next slide. Thanks. So learning expeditions are our flagship initiative because it leads also to proof of concepts and collaborations. So big corporations that are so our partners do host an event monthly at the headquarters or at an emblematic site of their activity. And there is a half day visit or a full day visit and B2B meetings between business units and startups to explore potential collaborations. Next slide, please. Okay. If we can maybe I think the video, we can share the video. It's a 1-minute video that illustrates a collaboration between one laureate and the Versailles Castle. So sorry, it's in French, but I think you will understand and I can translate. So if you scan the QR code, you can talk with an AI and dialogue with the statues at Versailles Castle. And this, this collaboration, you can now test this function, and it's an example of a great collaboration from our startups. And maybe the last slide, if you can. Thanks a lot. Just the last slide of. The one with the European Manifesto for Travel Tech, if it's possible. It's so here are they are the examples of the startups. So from a lot of subsectors and the partners, we have about 70 partners. And just after, no, it's okay. Just my conclusion, maybe to conclude. Perfect. We'd like to, so we wrote a manifesto for European travel tech that has been sent to EU countries, and we'd like to build a network of national incubators and accelerators and develop a dedicated European support program for scaling, to foster also public-private partnerships, and to support travel tech dedicated investments, because we would like to highlight success stories and encourage exchanges between investors, governments, startups at the EU level. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Miriam. And also prior to this webinar, Miriam mentioned that there's also this French network of tourism incubation programs. So apart from the European scale, but also here we can see at national level, good collaboration of the different regional labs and thematic tourism thematic incubation programs. Thanks, Miriam. So the tech accelerators were also kind of the starting point to conduct this work. But we quickly realized also that there are plenty of programs focusing on sustainability, and therefore I'm happy to have Natalia Mesa, a national coordinator in Costa Rica UNDP, and you will recognize quickly that it's a very good example for a mission-driven incubation program. Please.
Thank you for including me in this inspiring conversation, because I'm learning a lot with all the examples that we are sharing right now. So as you said, I am Natalia Mesa Ramirez. I am the National Coordinator of the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, which is in fact a global project working in more than 130 countries. And it's a UNDP project. And we're working actively to close the biodiversity finance gap. And maybe what you are wondering, what is the relationship? Biodiversity finance gap and tourism, because that is why I'm going to explain today our experience with the Raíces program, the first business incubation program that was designed to work with indigenous people, and where also we have one specific experience to create one financial mechanism that also was designed to accomplish with one specific goal from the National Biodiversity Strategy. We all depend on nature, so this is also why it's important to think about the new kind of business model that also can accomplish bigger goals. As you can see in this first slide, we have a bunch of different stakeholders and partners. This is a public and private partnership, in fact, which is championed by the Minister of Environment in Costa Rica, but also working with the National Institute of Tourism, the National Institute of Learning, the Minister of Labor. We work with the National Indigenous Board, with the Developing Bank System, and also with Impact Hub San Jose, which is part of the global network of innovation. So please, the next slide to start also this presentation, because I have a question for you. What is the Costa Rican tourism known for? What is the first thing that maybe comes to your mind? Here we have a hint, of course, in this slide, because maybe you think about nature, you think about biodiversity. And I always say that that is part of the main assets that we have as country, of course, but we are more than that. I think that the main assets that we have as country, of course, is natural capital, but at the same time, it's people. So next slide, please, because this is part of the experience of how we can diversify also the offer that we are having in Costa Rica and include indigenous peoples, not because from my desk, I think that it was a wonderful idea. That is because they thought that they want to have a specific tourism mechanism to promote tourism in indigenous territories as part of the biodiversity national strategy. And they are part of our living natural nation heritage, and they can also strengthen our tourism offer. And something that I would like to highlight here is raíces, which is the word that we are using in the program, means roots in Spanish. So we are talking about cultural roots, and at the same time, roots are the connection with earth. So please, the next slide. So Raíces is in fact the first business incubation program that was birthed to promote indigenous tourism in a pretty early stage, but also is allocating at the same time innovation public grants that were available for other kind of innovation, but not for tourism and not for indigenous peoples. So we are working with our partner, which is the Developing Bank System, SBD, which has been working by more than 10 years, promoting entrepreneurship at country level. And by first time, they allow us to design together a specific program to work with indigenous peoples, but also to work in tourism and allocate specific grant, non-refundable funds to support the concept that they have for development. So the next slide, please. This is also a story that started from public policy. I told you that we are the Biodiversity Finance Initiative working to close the biodiversity finance gap. And that comes also to understand that National Biodiversity Strategy, which is the main public policy that we are following here, they have several targets for several sectors, including tourism. And we decided to have one specific financial mechanism, which is RAISES program. So this is part of having, for example, public policy and go to reality to create a specific powerful mechanism to accomplish national commitments and also to accomplish the vision that have the indigenous peoples for their own kind of development. So we started here with this specific approach for the program because also we figure out we need something to create and promote the new business models that we need, something that could be nature positive, regenerative, and at the same time recognizes the potential that as a country we have in cultural tourism. So at the first time when we started working with the idea, we thought, I did a little bit from our side, a little bit innocent maybe. We thought that maybe we can have one specific program for acceleration and do matchmaking with venture capital. And the reality was that we weren't prepared for that. We need something that can also work with early stage enterprises, with early stage ideas, with startups, also to create investment readiness in order to access pre-fundable funds, in order to access venture capital. So part of also the purpose is creating a specific program that can support the cosmovision of indigenous peoples and gave them also the opportunities to create specific business models that are also that gonna be part also of the value chain of tourism, and at the same time diversify the tourism of Costa Rica, because we can be more than just tourism for nature and just tourism for wellness. We can incorporate also cultural vision in that. So I think that the people that already talked today also share about the same like backbone of methodology that we are following here. Because in Costa Rica, we have like a boot camp, a specific and selection program with a competition. And we have a 6-month training program with capacity building, following Lean Startup. They have access for funding, but also at the same time, they can pilot their specific business ideas. And they have also access to mentoring, networking, community, and we are connected them with the current value chain of tourism in Costa Rica. But also we have something that I think is important to highlight. We have the Minister of Labor doing public investment in enabling conditions. And that's something to understand, that it's not the kind of investment that one small and medium enterprise or startup will need. It's also investing in the enabling conditions that the whole environment needs in order to succeed and in order to connect with the value chains of tourism. And something also that I would like to share today is that we started developing one specific early stage program, which was like 6 months just for ideas, just for startups, and with the idea that at the end of the program, they are going to sell it and they are going to be connected with the whole ecosystem for tourism. But now we have also a go-to-market program that also is like the second step after being graduated from the early stage. And also we create kind of associative model, which is you have to work together as different entrepreneurs in the indigenous territory in order to also to create like a vision of destination in indigenous territories in Costa Rica. So this is something also that you were highlighting, Highness. I think as part of the study, you were saying that maybe we are just focusing in short term, and we understood that we need something bigger in order to gain readiness, in order to connect with the real market, and in order to connect with investors. So right now we have different stages and different steps in order to create that long-term availability of different tools that were also designed in order to meet the maturity level of each different project that we're working on. And the last slide that I would like to share is just the results, like just for wrapping up here. We have been working in 4 editions since 2021, and we received almost 500 different proposals from 9 indigenous territories, and we received less than 10% of that. But something also powerful here is we're creating impact not just for the tourism value chain. We're also creating impact for biodiversity, for the forest, and for the livelihoods. Being also the majority of people that is part of the program, women working, and also for first time in their life having their own livelihoods or their own employment. And that is working also in empowering women all at the same time, and mobilizing funds that were available for innovation, but not available for the kind of innovation that we have in indigenous peoples and indigenous territories. So I saw your eyes, Hannes, and about to finish right now with the last slide. And thank you so much. With the last slide, please. This is information in case that you have any doubt about the RAISES program and the kind of also model that we are promoting for having one specific program to have the kind of business incubation program, the kind of business that we need.
Thanks a lot, Natalia. Also stressing this interesting embeddedness also of incubation in the cultural, with the cultural background, but also incubation as a means to diversify the tourism sector. Many very interesting examples, and happy to continue the discussion soon. So even I think the previous example highlighted very well the role of the local community with the RAISES program. But across our analysis, we stumbled across local programs again and again. So addressing very specific challenges, bringing together local stakeholders. So happy to hear about Barcelona Travel Hub and what is special about it. So we have Mariona Masip, coordinator of the Barcelona Travel Hub, here with us. Please, Mariona, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today, and thank you for the opportunity to share our vision and all the work that we do in Barcelona Travel Hub with you. So my name is Mariana Masip. I'm the coordinator of Barcelona Travel Hub, and today I'm going to share a little bit what we do. So please, next slide. So yeah. Barcelona Travel Hub is established in 2024, so it's quite young, and as an innovation ecosystem. That our main goal is to connect all the agents that are part of this ecosystem, such that is all the entire tourism value chain. So next slide, please. Yeah, so here is part of our team, and it's interesting because Barcelona Travel Hub is an initiative promoted by the Barcelona Hotels Association, and it is developed in close collaboration with the Barcelona City Council. So this is strong private-public collaboration allows us to align all the needs of the industry with the strategic vision of the city. So since this year, we changed all the operational management, and this year has been transferred to the tech tourism cluster. And these changes allow us also to give us access to all these travel ecosystem, not only for the hotels one. So it helps a lot to strengthen our connection with the travel and tourism ecosystem. Next one, please. So our purpose is very clear: is to connect people, ideas, and organizations that wants to actively shape the future of tourism. We work across the entire tourism value chain, bringing together startups, established companies, public institutions, universities, entrepreneurs, of course, and the students. And what makes Barcelona Travel Hub special is that we are not just a space, we are living the collaborative community focused on the real impact. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is all our scenario that we are like building and offering to all our ecosystem. Our main one is the Lab for Travel, that is our incubation and acceleration program. And through this program, we support early stage and growing startups that are developing and transforming solutions for tourism. Inside the Lab for Travel, we provide practical training sessions, strategic mentorships, industry connection opportunities to pilot solutions with real companies in the sector. And this is 6-month programs, and also we give access to exclusive benefits in tools and also in events. We also create our network events because we want to approach this public not only for these early stage startups, also to these that are in a growest stages. So we create a month networking events to promote this ecosystem and networking between founders, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders, sharing their experience, insight, and vision with our community. And in our last day, in our demo day in the Lab for Travel, we select also not only the best startup of the program. Also, we select 4 of the startups that's gonna expose or gonna share their project in this Invest in Travel. That is the event of the year that we connect investors with the startups, and this allows us also to provide this connection between the startups that are already in our programs and the others. We also, this 2026, we are running the Excellent Travel Awards, which recognize the most innovative and impactful projects that are shaping the future of tourism. And we also doing in parallel working groups to collaborate as a collaborative spaces where professionals from different backgrounds come together to work on real challenge in tourism and hospitality. So this is where we create like new initiative and collaborations between companies and startups. We also provide, this is one of our the professional webinars allows us also to give knowledge to all our ecosystem, to the new technologies that are in the ecosystem, and they are focused on trends, technology, and the best practice, open to a wider professional international audience. We also connect all the universities. So another important initiative is the Student Talent Challenge, a project based on competition open to students, where they can submit innovation ideas, business projects, and even the final degrees project. And we give them the opportunity to access our Lab for Travel program to the winners. And finally, we are trying to connect all these international networking hubs that we want to share ideas and best practices. So this webinar is also a good help for it. And we ultimately, Barcelona Travel Hub is to transform tourism into a more innovative and sustainable and human-centered industry. So please, next slide. Thank you, everyone. This is our second year of the hub. We already had like 30 startups in our program. So we are growing. We are trying to connect all this ecosystem. And thank you for everyone for the attention.
Thanks, Mariona. Interesting to see all these different services that you provide. And we've seen also in the analysis that there are so many options of potential services that you could provide, but also interesting this market access, the role of networking events, even awards, and also great that you are engaged in sharing across the group of incubators and wider hubs in this regard also, and to share your experience. Thanks a lot. We are moving north, and there are a couple of very tech-savvy countries, of course, up there. And therefore, I think no wonder that there is also the Nordic Travel Tech Lab. So Per Arne Friestad is with us. Why did you start this initiative? How it has evolved is also a very interesting issue in your case, as you see also a changing ownership or financing support with your lab. So we are curious to hear more from Per Arne Friestad, co-founder of the Nordic Travel Tech Lab.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Before I start, I just want to say that for the past 9 years, I've been working in the travel industry. Up until this summer, I was the CEO and co-founder of Nordic Travel Tech Lab. So today I will take you through our journey and my personal opinions regarding what next step should be. So I hope I will answer your questions, and if there is anything, please reach out in the chat. Next. The story behind started actually back in 2018. I was working in a startup and got in contact with some previous founders of tech companies within the travel industry. So we were sitting down and they had an idea of creating a meeting space for travel companies. So after a while, back in 2020, we established Nordic Travel Tech Lab and had a goal to be a network within the Nordics, gathering all the startups, investors, and potential partners from the industry. Next and next. So after a while, we were working with Icelandic tourism cluster. Then we got in contact with the Hub for Innovation and Tourism in Denmark, together with the Dansk Kyst- og Naturturisme. So we founded the Nordic Travel Tech Network and got some fundings from the Nordic Innovation. And that was a 3-year project. Next. The incubator, sorry, one back. The incubator consists of 3 main areas. It's the incubator and accelerator program that we were running. Then we have the travel tech and matchmaking meeting arenas. And then we have the international network. Next. Since we were starting in 2020, everything had to be on online. So we changed a little bit on the concept and decided to divide it into 3 main areas. It was the one-to-one mentoring, where we had mentors supporting the startups in different areas. Some wanted to have technical support, so then we brought in CTOs, senior developers, and so on. Some of the startups, they wanted more on the financial side. They wanted more on pitching, how to make a good presentation, and so on. So we had a very wide diversity of mentors participating in the programs. Then we had 2 main tracks that we were developing together with Startup Norway and our partners. That was 6 sessions. If you move on 1 slide, please. There were 6 sessions under the fundraising track, where we went into fundraising planning, creating the materials. On all these online sessions, we had cases that the startups were doing in between the sessions, and we're presenting. So we had a very good interaction between the startups and the mentors and the participant in the different tracks. If you move on one, please. And then we went into topics like due diligence, deal structure, what type of deals the startups could look into. We had deal closure and post-closure planning. We had a lot of great partners that you will see later on that participated in each session. If you go to the next one, then we had the traction track that was more travel specific, where we prepared the startups to get their first deal. In the Nordics, it was very hard for a lot of the startups to get the first meeting, to get introduced to the travel players. So that was one of our main roles in the program. If you move one more slide. When we had these sessions, and they were full days, so to get it more interesting and to get more knowledge to a lot of these startups, we managed to get a lot of corporate speakers that helped us a lot in the process of getting the startups ready to meet them on the final activity that was the demo day. So if you move on, you see that together with some of our partners, we managed to get a lot of the interesting investors in this space to collaborate and to participate in the program. If you move one more, please. Yeah, here are some of the startups. Altogether, we had almost 500 applications, and we went through and looked at 250 companies during these years that were really good companies that we would like to have in, but we only had space for approximately 20 startups, scale-ups per batch. So if you move on, these startups, they managed to get about 20 million euro after they had in investments, after they had participated in our program. So we're quite happy with the investors that we managed to match them up with, and also the quality. As you probably hear, you recognize a lot of the logos, companies that are up and running today and doing really good out there. So we're really happy about that. If you move 2 more slides, please. Then we had the travel tech lab and the matchmaking. For us, it was really important. One thing was the program and having a good quality on the education we were giving the startups. But it was also the matchmaking arena that a lot of the startups were missing. And a lot of the corporates, they wanted to go into participate in these days. This is one example from here in Norway, where we had Startup Extreme, where there was a lot of people coming. So we had a great rounds where, first of all, we had some of the major players like Plug and Play, Lufthansa, and JetBlue presenting. After that, we had some pitching time, and then we had a lot of time to matchmake, having discussion one-to-one, and to really introduce the startups to our ecosystem. If you move on, I see we're running out of time. Yeah, these are some of the events. You're probably very well aware of them. From my perspective, these was some of the best events that we participated on during a year. A typical year, we had meetings with all our partners, tried to reach out to most of the European countries when we had the time. If you move on a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, you can move on. This is just some of the events we were in on. These are some, not all. I see that some logos have changed since this was made, but here are some of the ecosystems that we were able to work closely with, exchange startups, seminars, and so on. And I think that's one of the most important things now is to, as you mentioned before, getting all the networks together, find a good way to collaborate and share. That's some of the things I think you should consider when you move on this. And then, of course, it will be more discussion about the financial situation and how long a program is able to be. So I'll wrap up there. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thanks, Per Arne. Also an interesting case working across countries. And I can say thanks to all of our speakers in the first session. And you are, of course, invited to stay for the rest of the webinar. And we've seen that the programs are very individual, also tailored to the specific interests, to the specific challenges in the local tourism ecosystem. So hope that this has been an inspiration for the audience as well. And I think all of our speakers indicated that they are available for questions. So I think just reach out, and today is really the start of the discussion and great to pitch these different programs. So thanks a lot again for Katharina. Capsule T, really an industry association-driven program within an interesting setting. Also Gustava Beta AI, role of consultancies in this regard. Miriam with the clear focus on tech and digitalization in France. Natalia, RACES program, policy-driven, preserving biodiversity, but linking very well to the wider policy environment. Mariona from Barcelona, great variety of services. And of course, Per Arne, Nordic Travel Tech Lab, cross-national incubator. Also, thanks, Per Arne, for sharing your contact details. So thanks a lot. And we like to move on with the discussion with our next panel. And rest assured, we will have time to discuss and keep the closing remarks short. So the first session, we explored the different cases and how incubation could work. But now we like to take to the broader discussion and think about also as incubation and acceleration as a tool to promote, to support the whole startup environment, and think also about the policy links. Do we understand the startups seen in tourism sufficiently? What about incubation, acceleration to deliver really this promise of innovation? How to scale up also these interesting support programs, which are often limited to a number of startups. Again, questions are very welcome in the chat, and please feel free to post your questions. To briefly introduce the speakers, so we have Misa Labarile, Policy Officer, European Commission, DG Move. You've already seen her for the opening remarks. Thanks for being with us. We do have also Sergio Guerrero, Senior Knowledge Director, Turismo de Portugal, and also Chair of the OECD Tourism Committee. Moving on, Joshua Ryan Zaha, Director of Travel Tech, Tourism and Festivals at the Edinburgh Future Institute, also a very knowledgeable colleague from the tech side, including how AI may change the situation as well for the startups. And also Pablo Shah, Policy Analyst from our OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, regions and cities, bringing also the wider perspective beyond tourism. And maybe starting also with this broader perspective, I mean, a question to all of you, but maybe Pablo likes to start also. So we heard many good practices, in this case, from the tourism sector in the first session. And your work goes beyond this single sector perspective. And I'm just thinking whether this incubation acceleration is really as powerful as it seems, and are we making really a great impact, or what do you think about the impact of incubation and how this feeds also with our priority on innovation, promoting new solutions in a sector like tourism?
Yeah, thanks very much, Hannes. It's great to be on the panel today. I think what we've seen, the examples presented in the tourism sector are also mirrored, across a lot of other startup sectors. So there's been a really big growth in the number of incubators and accelerators across the OECD in the last few years, and they have emerged as one of the most important types of actors within entrepreneurial ecosystems. So then they're not just providing supports and facilities to startups. They also have a really important role as ecosystem connectors And I think increasingly incubators are leaning into this function. So they plug startups and scale-ups into the wider public support system. But they also introduce them to other private actors like investors, like potential customers, corporates. So they're really important facilitators of entrepreneurial ecosystems, and they are playing an increasingly important role. And a big part of what we do in the entrepreneurship unit is we're advising governments on how to develop policies to support business incubators. So there's a lot of interest in this topic, and I guess one of the main takeaways that policy can be hugely influential in upgrading the quality of incubation support that startups receive. And we've seen that in many different OECD countries. And the best policies tend to go beyond just the basic provision of funding. They also try to lean into the power of policy to lift incubation standards. So there are different levers that you can think about. So there are funding conditions and criteria, which can be quite influential in affecting the behaviors and the activities that incubators pursue. Some of the programs also attach training and capacity building for incubator staff, which has proven to be quite effective. So I'm sure these principles also apply to the tourism sector and to tourism incubators, but I think there are also some interesting distinguishing features of tourism incubators that might require a more nuanced approach for supporting incubators in this sector, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on in the panel.
Yeah, I mean, the first question that usually pops up, is there a need for tourism-specific incubation and acceleration? And what we haven't mapped in this policy brief, because we've seen already with the OECD European Commission work on inclusive entrepreneurship, more than 900 incubation programs in the European Union. So there are many sector agnostic programs there. So this is really one of the first questions, and also looking to Josh and Sergio. Is there really the need for tourism specific incubations? Is our tourism sector in a way special that we also need to provide specialized support? Whoever likes to go first.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Josh. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Sergio. I look forward to hearing more from you as well. Very quickly, I think there is a need for a few reasons, and I'll probably give a technology perspective specifically. The first is that seasonality means that you actually will be operating in slightly curious ways, which might not be completely true for other sectors. And that relates to the market that you're probably selling to. So if you're a technology company, you're likely to be selling directly to micro businesses or a lot of very small businesses if you're B2B. Or if you're going to the customers directly, then it's a huge international market you're often working with. Or you're working with very, very large corporates, and there's not much in the middle. So it's a very tricky marketplace that you need to work in, especially if you're working with small businesses. And then I think the final thing is probably the interconnectedness of tourism. I think it was mentioned by a colleague from Portugal earlier about it being a complex ecosystem, tourism. And it's very diverse as well. So you have everything from the fantastic work going on in Costa Rica around sustainability and communities, all the way up to massive aviation infrastructure projects. So it's complicated, it's seasonal, and the marketplace is very, very diverse.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Sergio, if you want to jump on in directly.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we've discovered and we've started to explore this topic 10 years ago here in Portugal. And in the beginning, it was us interested, and the industry was not interested at all, because markets were growing and no one felt the need for change. But I think picking also on what Joshua mentioned, absolutely needed. First of all, travel and tourism is probably one of the sectors more exposed to technologically developments. We most of the times don't feel it when we go to mainstream discussions on the tourism sector. It doesn't look like it because we sometimes treated like a low skill sector, but on the opposite side. We had with the internet, our market transformed completely. If you go to the two largest companies in terms of market cap today, they were born in 2006 and 2008. So a huge transformation of a traditional sector that changed completely. Booking.com and Airbnb transformed completely the landscape of the sector and the way of doing business in the sector. Second one, Joshua mentioned, is the sector of SMEs, and most of all of micro SMEs, which don't have knowledge, access, and ways of moving on. So they need to have the support of a proper ecosystem that can help them to adopt what it's adaptable for them and progress and don't be left behind in this field. And another point on, I really love the concept of ecosystems. And one thing, and I've just came last week from a discussion on this, is when you look at the tourism ecosystem and the amount of challenges that we have as an industry, there is no company or authority that has the power, responsibility, or the means to solve the issues. Because why? Because they are horizontal to several areas. You go from transport, you go from cities, you go from environment. So they are very complex, and the only way of solving them properly is to bring this ecosystem approach and make companies, authorities, and other players coming together on this. That is my view on the need of this agenda.
Perfect. And we see in many of the incubation programs that they are really into connecting stakeholders, launching network initiatives, network events, meetings, and so on. And curious to hear also, Misa, I mean, there are many EU projects that we have, and that could be also labeled as incubation, acceleration, but also a couple of projects taking into account the existing SMEs, the established businesses, which we shouldn't forget. But talking here about ecosystem incubation as ecosystem support mechanism. So this might ring a bell. I mean, the EU is talking all the time about tourism ecosystem and ecosystem development, a lot of work on data, that you mentioned also the complexity regarding data and the knowledge that is required. So what's your take on the current discussion also with this ecosystem, enabling ecosystem approach?
Well, we talk about it all the time. It's absolutely true. I couldn't have put it better myself, because that is also a post-COVID effect, and it's so interesting that I've heard so much of this today. I did not expect it, but that's another line of thought. When the industrial strategy came out, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, all of a sudden we started discussing ecosystems, not sectors anymore. We started thinking in terms of ecosystems, and this really ties up very nicely what Sergio was nicely putting together, which is that you need to get out of the silos thinking and start making the connections and building the synergies. That's what happened across the board in 2021 when we came out with this industrial strategy. But I think for tourism is very important. It's crucial because, I'm not the first person to say this, but like everyone else has said before me, and you just highlighted, tourism is everything. We talk about data. All data can be tourism data, depending on what you do with it, right? So my take is, like I said at the beginning, I'm here to listen and to learn. But what I'm understanding from the cases that were presented earlier and from what Joshua also highlighted, the complexity and the variety and the versatility of the system. Perhaps there is a way for the EU to influence this process in a way that benefits the startups, perhaps also the SMEs, but let's focus on the startups for a second, without without creating an overburden. And that's because that's my particular personal concern. I'm thinking, and I'm happy to keep talking about this with the rest of the panelists, see if they have any views on this, but I'm thinking, who better than the EU for the single market to really leverage on the coordination power and putting people all in one room? And that's without even mentioning the financial leverage that we could put forward. that's a completely different topic, and we can discuss it when the multi-annual financial framework comes into being. But the coordination leverage, I think, is very important. And if we could put it at the service, not so much of these startups, but of these incubators that we've heard from today, so long as they agree that this could be useful, then I think it's absolutely worth exploring.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is taking me also to an interesting element. The one is the coordination, and the other one, maybe a little bit of a step prior to this, is also asking on which level does startup support take place most efficiently? So we see local programs, we see national programs, even international ones. The spots are available are very competitive. I mean, we have often only 10 spots available. Don't know, Pablo, bringing you in also on the wider perspective. So thinking about the different levels, a lot of local programs, but also international ones. Where do you think this startup support takes place most efficiently?
Well, I think in the context of incubation, one of the reasons why it works quite well is there are these cohort effects that develop. So by having relatively small class sizes, there's a lot of quite powerful peer learning that takes place. The bonds, the kind of networking effects can be a bit tighter, but I think there is definitely a lot of scope to do policy at a higher level, but it's more by facilitating learning between different incubators. So incubator networks are an idea that we advocate for. So there's actually a really good example of one in Portugal. So Startup Portugal have the new national network of incubators that does training for incubator personnel. There are chances for incubator staff to learn from one another. So I think, it'd be hard to deliver incubation programs for very large cohorts of startups, but I think there's definitely scope for policymakers in different countries and regions to work together to deliver support more effectively for startups and scale-ups.
Perfect. So I think also, revisiting the history of tourism management, we also started at a certain point with networking initiatives for destinations, for DMOs, and now bringing them together on an international level. The same might be true for incubators and accelerators. Before we can move on a little bit with the coordination discussion, just curious also, Sergio, about your Portugal experience. And Portugal is really one of the most active countries we saw also in our mapping. So you have quite a couple of initiatives. And how do you manage or see particular issues that you are facing when also scaling your idea? I mean, you obviously made good experience, but what about scaling your incubation efforts?
Well, thank you, Anas. And I think our experience was it is an interesting one because it is a learning one. So I think we've started by learning, and we've started with the recognition of the value that incubators could provide to the ecosystem. So the ability of connecting startups with businesses were there, and basically we invited and we've created back in 2017 a network of incubators that we invite every year to work within the tourism sector. And while I was listening to your presentation, we basically used the methodology that you were putting on, were like challenge based. So what we do every year. So the National Tourism Board created a program that every year launches a call for incubators and accelerators to develop programs. Condition number one, it has to be challenge based. So they have to bring companies with specific problems, and they do then the startup scouting to help them to solve the issues. The first one, very dedicated to that. And we had two goals. One, because I think, and a little bit to Misa, because I think at the EU level, this is needed. You need to generate ideas and generate new businesses. So promoting entrepreneurship must be part of this equation, because the most entrepreneurs that we have and the most startups that we have, the better use cases than we have for integrating them with the sector. The second one is, how do we do a kind of system like we have, which is making it permanent. I think it was your topic also on your presentation, which is how do you take this from one project of 1 year to something that everyone knows that every year occurs. And I think the secret of things that we've been doing well is because we've changed governments, I don't know how many times, and the program is the same. We didn't change the program. So every year, incubators and accelerators know that we're going to launch a call. And what we do is every year, call might be a little bit different because we learn from the process. In the beginning, we were doing horizontal programs like, well, startups for everything. We reached to a point where we understood, and probably the maturity of startups also allowed, that we moved into verticals. We moved into airports, like Gustavo well mentioned. We moved into sustainability. We moved into hotels. Just last week, we've launched the first one for travel agents. So I think the idea is this. Also, on top of this, the funding issue, it is relevant. Why? Because my responsibility as a tourism minister, I don't have tools to support companies that technically are not from the tourism sector because they are services. And services here in Portugal is another department that takes care of supporting their funding. So what we've done, we've collected with our venture capital firm, Portugal Ventures, and also attracting also other venture capital firms to support the development of those startups. At the same time, what we do is we support the tourism companies to adopt those solutions. So playing always at the two levels. The first one on promoting entrepreneurship and giving guarantees to startups that they can grow, but at the same time promoting the adoption of innovation and technology by the tourism sector companies.
Interesting. Misa, you opened your mic. Do you like to comment or?
No, not really. I was essentially going to say, yes, kind of endorsing what Sergio was saying. Basically, Sergio, you're advocating for consistency of support at EU level. Once it's on, it should be clear, it should be reliable, it should be permanent. And this goes beyond funding. This also includes supporting what I think Natalia earlier defined as creating investment readiness. That's what you were advocating for. So essentially support EU level through all of the stages and the steps that are needed.
Perfect. I mean, there are so many topics that we could discuss, but maybe focusing now on one element that also Sergio mentioned, and there has been also a good example, the France Tourism Lab. And Mariam told me as well that they also support tech companies to access the tourism market, which is also an interesting perspective. But as we were discussing this cooperation, tech environment, but also the big corporates, I think Per Arne mentioned also Amadeus, Lufthansa, so the big players. So, and George also in this tech environment, there are so many very relevant big players. So what's your take on cooperating with these established, with these big corporates? What's their role in tourism-specific incubation acceleration?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think so corporates and the way that they innovate often is internal, but because it becomes so big, it can be quite difficult to do. So often startup programs are seen as a way of outsourcing their own innovation. So I know that Amadeus has a launch pad and a range of accelerator programs. So does Lufthansa. I think a range of others do. And it is one potential success route for a startup to be acquired and to be adopted by a large company. And that's a good outcome for a lot of companies. So that's one way. We've talked about venture capital investment as well. That's another route to success, so that you can scale, you become perhaps a little bit more dominant in the market, and then you can hire a lot of people, and then it's great economic benefit. But I think with tourism and technology and travel and technology and hospitality and technology, we also need to think about success at a smaller scale. I think especially with AI democratizing the way that we can build technology companies, I think there's a potential pathway where even small or moderate sized technology companies are a good success. And maybe they're operating within particular niche markets or particular small geographies as well. And they could be having 10, 12 people, maybe more. but it's still a success, and it can be very useful, and they can potentially really drive economic and social benefit into the tourism ecosystem. So corporates are really important, but also we need to really consider what we consider to be successful, and it doesn't always mean just huge scale. It could mean acquisition, and it could mean social impact.
Interesting. So if anyone likes to comment, Sergio, Pablo, Misa, feel free.
I'd just like to ask, so Joshua, so what you're saying is that this is moving very fast, and it's potentially moving even faster thanks to AI. So anything that we want to do to support this should happen, and should happen in a structured way. It should be done well from the beginning. Is that what I'm taking from this?
That's right. And also take into account the way that new companies are being formed so quickly with AI capabilities. And it basically empowers people with a tourism or hospitality background to start technology companies. But just like Sergio was talking about, and I think a few others, connecting them to the right technology expertise once they've hit that point, it is super crucial, because you can build a company with AI quite quickly, but you might not be able to scale it because the infrastructure is perhaps not as strong as it needs to be. But yeah, AI is definitely democratizing technology development, and it might mean that we need to think about who technology entrepreneurs could be in a more broad way.
Who could be the technology entrepreneurs? Yes, one of the main questions. Great. I mean, we are coming to an end of our webinar, and to make it concrete, we can go a couple of minutes over. That's not a problem. But to make it concrete also for kind of closing remarks, Josh, Sergio, Pablo, Misa, I think you will give closing remarks anyway. But what do you think is the priority now to advance incubation in tourism? So maybe starting with Sergio.
Yeah, I think giving and picking on what Misa was putting it is creating this trust environment that this is not a one shot, because sometimes innovation takes so much time, and this is the perfect place for us as a tourism industry to create the mechanism to anticipate the future. And my lesson on this, being quite fast, I've spent, or our ecosystem and our startups spent 2 or 3 years trying to sell digital menus to restaurants, or selling chatbots for hotels for 2.5 years. And then February 2020 came, and everyone, even the small companies, were able to install a digital menu for $100, or to install a chatbot for a few €100, and so on. So I think we should create this. And from my perspective, I might be a suspect, it is a public policy issue. So let's establish the principle that these networks are absolutely critical to anticipate the future. They have to be consistent, they have to be proactive, and they have to be continuous. That is my pitch for this. So creating this, and then adding the tools that are needed for each one of the stages, is to generate and to create ideas in one place, to accelerate and to incubate the good ideas that have potential. And then on the open innovation part is creating also the financial tools for companies to be able to adopt technology in the scale. So it is a little bit building this. And I think from the EU level, I think nurturing and creating networks of these networks can be one important tool to foster in.
Thanks a lot. Josh, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, of course. Very quickly, I love everything Sergio said. I would focus on test beds, which is how do you create an environment by which technology companies or other tourism startups can really find their customers and be almost given a small amount to trial it, to get feedback, to pivot, because it's really hard to sell to your first couple of customers. And as soon as you do, you get so much good information. So test beds, finding a way to support activity in the real world to get good evidence back for these new companies to get started.
Good. Pablo?
Yeah, actually similar points to the other. I think it seems that tourism startups have a particular or an even higher need to be embedded within the kind of tourism ecosystem, even more so than in other startups. So these links to the, be it the tourism agency, the hotels, the airports, these kind of connections with the other tourism stakeholders are really important. So I think, when we're designing policies, it's really important to select incubators that have these strong ties with the ecosystem and to incentivize, networking activities that bring startups in touch with the people that they need to contact.
Great. Before handing over to Misa for closing remarks, just thanks on my side. Very easy to moderate the discussion. Many topics that we touched, continuity, monitoring, what we define as success for these incubators and the startups. How can we engage more in the coordination? How can we secure funding? But I think we need also a discussion about the role of our very well established DMO specific support as well, industry associations. So we are providing support in very different manners, very different mechanisms at the moment. And then also great that we came to a very fundamental discussion about the priorities for the broader tourism policy and how to really be aware of the trends and the solutions that we need. So thanks for the discussion, and Misa, the closing remarks are yours.
I will be very quick. I see it is 3:01, but first of all, I wanted to thank you, Hannes, for facilitating this. You're essentially the incubator of the incubators because you accelerated the discussion. I mean, with this way, bad fun. But and you took away from me what I could have said earlier about the final say. No, I'm joking. But I think at European level, first of all, this was a learning experience for me. Therefore, as you said it, as you put earlier, it's the beginning of a journey, and I think more should be explored and more should be done along this line of work. I said that already, so I don't need to repeat it. You summed it up very nicely, and I think from my point of view, I can only give obviously the EU perspective. My first reaction and this preliminary kind of conclusions is it sounds like there is potential here for action at EU level that could improve or support this ecosystem. And for this, I think concretely going forward, this means that as we prepare and draft a EU strategy for tourism, and we have elements in it already planned out, such as support to more upskilling, perhaps a EU academy, support to competitiveness, continuing support to SMEs through the digital innovation hubs, a data space, data sharing, AI, and so on and so forth, little bits and pieces here and there. I think there is an opportunity here to include a narrative about startups intended as travel tech innovators. And in order for me to do this, to include it and to integrate it in the narrative, your excellent paper is crucial, and I'm borrowing from it by saying that perhaps rather than reinventing the wheel, we could look into ways to connect the dots, which is something we can do very, very well at European level. And that is the first reaction that I would take with me, and something that perhaps we can work together a bit more going forward. That obviously is to be discussed for the 2026 year. But this has been extremely enriching to me. A particular shout out to Joshua for bringing forward the AI perspective. I'd never thought about it. I did not know much about incubators, but I certainly never connected them to how AI is changing the ecosystem. So that's really important to me as well, because we'll be working more on that. And to all of the best practices, I hope, particularly the European ones, but not only, but I hope we can be in touch so that at European level, we can also give you a bit more visibility. I know the OECD forum is fantastic, but we can also do some bit of work from Brussels. So please stay in touch.
Thanks, Misa. Thank you, everyone. I think I'm not going to repeat everything. I think it's been a really good discussion. And I think Hannes and Misa have summed it up very well. My role is simply to thank everyone.
Seems that we lost Shane. but continuing her sentence, her role is to thank everyone, thank all the speakers, all the audience for participating in the discussion, and very much looking forward to the next steps. Keep in touch.
Thank you to everyone who's connected. Thank you to all the speakers. I think has been may be able to support the discussion. I'm gone again, I'm guessing, by some of the faces.
That's fine. So, great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Good.